Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of the Stitch Goddess podcast. I'm being joined at the moment by Sir Fluffy Eddie McFluff and my big jumbo fat snowy owl. And it's a beautiful, almost fall day in September. The fall is approaching, but the weather has not quite changed. It's very humid outside, not quite cold enough to wear a sweater yet. As I discovered the other day, I just went outside and I turned into a puddle. Anyway, welcome back to the Stitch Goddess podcast. I'm so happy you're joining me today. I have some wonderful things to share with you. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Elissa Pack, and you can find the show notes for this podcast at thestitchgoddess.com. So, I have some wonderful finished objects to share. I finished the top of my Awesome Ocean quilt. That took a very long time. It was at least a year's worth of quilting, or at least assembling the top, cutting all the pieces and getting everything done. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. And I finally put the final borders on and realized that I was only off by 1/2 of an inch along the top and the bottom. I don't know how much that's going to make a difference when I have it professionally quilted. I will find out, but we'll see how that goes. But I did not do any knitting for about 2 weeks at the end of August, and that felt really kind of good because I got a lot of all that sewing done. And that was a lot of fun. But as soon as September 1st hit, I was ready. I had a big old skein up. It was Skein City in my dining room. I wound up a million skeins of yarn. It was a lot. And whoa. Before I get into the skeins of yarn, I want to share my other finished object, which is this beautiful sort of rainbow of birds of happiness. They are all finished. There are 14 colors, and it was just so much fun and such an easy project. Very rewarding to knit. I had the pattern memorized and everything, and you know what could be better than something like this for a cheerful, easy project? I mean, what could be better than a rainbow of little birds of happiness? Unless it's 2 rainbows. I decided to make 2 sets of these because I had enough yarn to go ahead and do this. So one set is for me. Another set is for a friend, and I will be sending these off in the mail very shortly. But these were just so much fun to make. My husband actually thought they were ducks, but they're birds. I think they would need a little bit more of a beak to be birds. But so much fun and so easy to make. I highly recommend that pattern. And it was just, like I said, an easy, fun, relaxing project where I just didn't have to think about it, what I was doing after, knitting 28 of them. So that went very well. But as I said, I was really excited to start knitting again, beginning of September. And one of the projects that I had seen right at the end, or one of the projects that I had in my queue, was the Dragonflies jumper from Joji Locatelli. And at the very end of August, I got in right before it closed. She is currently having the fall 2018 knit along, and I thought, why not join? Because the next project in my queue was a Joji Locatelli project, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. And so I've signed up. It is a knit along. It goes from September 1st to November 30th. And so you've got September, October, November, 3 months to make whatever pattern you've chosen of Joji Locatelli's. And I've chosen to do the Dragonflies jumper. And this is the yarn that I'm using. This is Madeline Tosh DK Twist, and it's 100% merino wool, and it's a DK weight, which is just slightly larger than what I've been using. And I did everything to swatch it up. I got a perfect gauge the first time out, and I even made the pattern gauge where you can sort of see the pattern of the dragonflies. And so I was ready to go with that, and here is my progress so far. I am basically at the very end of the first ball of yarn, and let's see, how does this work? Here we go. So it's a top-down sweater, and you start at the neckline, so you can start to see where the raglan sleeves are going to be along here, and then you have the front pattern and then another sleeve, of course. And it's a really, really enjoyable knit. The yarn is actually knitting up beautifully. I really love the sort of very subtle tonal pinks that are going on. I just think it's going to be so much fun to wear. It's such a bright color, and you know, perfect for winter time. Here, when it gets to be winter, it just turns kind of gray, and so I think this will be something to enjoy and wear in the winter time. Changed my hair color. Not quite sure how the pink will go with the red, but you know, we wear what we love. Go for it. Why not break the rules every now and then? The other thing I'm using are these really adorable stitch markers. They're actually in the shape of, it's a hexagon. It's a little, like a beehive sort of stitch markers. And this one happens to have a little gold bee on it. And I thought, that's as close as I can get to a dragonfly without actually having to buy a dragonfly stitch marker. So this is just really turning out to be lovely. I hope that it will fit really well. I don't think it's going to have a lot of extra ease, so it will be a more fitted sweater for the fall and winter. So I'm very excited to be working on this, and it's one of those projects where you think, I just want to knit to a certain point. I want to get to, you know, row number 12, but you just keep going. It just one more round. I want to knit one more round and go from there, and it's so much fun. The other project that I recently started was, and this was one of my fun caking up experiments. Olivia at This Handmade Life knitted a pair of socks based on the colors from Hue Loco's Color Riot, their fall palette. This lovely sort of rainbow of colors. And I decided to shamelessly copy her sock pattern. And I cast it on very enthusiastically using a skein of just the natural Wool Barn, I think the Signature Speckle sock. And I started, turn this around. And then as you knit, there is a little tiny cable, which is more like a braid. So there's 6 stitches involved, so you can shift where the cable is on every other row. And this was the initial project. I cast on 64 stitches and did about 12 rounds of ribbing, and then started in on the project and did, I made it actually farther than this, and I was looking at it thinking, this looks awfully narrow, it looks awfully tight. And I was sort of comparing it, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna try it on. And I put it on my leg, and the ribbing was just stretching beyond what I think is healthy for a knitted sock. But as I put it on my hand, I thought, you know what? This is actually really kind of cozy. So instead of throwing out the what I had already started, I saved this, and I'm going to be using this to make a pair of matching gloves. So what I did, I had started with a US 1, a 2.25 millimeter needle, and that was just way too small. And 64 stitches for my leg does not work. So I went up a tiny amount to a US 1.5, 2.5 millimeters. So we're talking a 1/4 millimeter difference. And then I cast on 72 stitches, did one round of decrease with the neutral color from the ribbing, so that I ended up with 68 stitches, and tried it on. And this is working really, really nicely. It's just a little bit looser, but it's not going to be nearly as tight and uncomfortable. And I just thought, oh, I don't want to knit a whole pair of socks and then regret not being able to wear them. I think that's such a shame. And so I am copying Olivia's design, but not necessarily the order of yarn that she did. I have been putting the yarns in order to what seems to fade into the next color. And I'm actually at the point where I'm going to do a Fish Lips Kiss heel. Olivia did a heel flap and gusset and then continued on down the foot. But I'm going to be using the same neutral color here for my heel. And I think that's going to look really interesting. So at the beginning of September, I wound up a lot of yarn. This was the Skein City. I wound up 7 skeins of the Madeline Tosh DK Twist in the colorway is called Sachet. It's beautiful bright pink. I also wound up a skein of this Hue Loco yarn. This is their Phyllis sock, fingering weight, and the colorway is called Eskimo, and it's a 75-25 merino wool and nylon. Along with the sort of companion, this is the same colorway. It's the Eskimo colorway, but it's called the Glitz sock. And I'm going to be making a little cardigan, a little baby cardigan, and I'm going to be holding these doubled. I don't know what I was thinking. I bought this specifically for a particular pattern, and then I realized that the pattern needed DK weight, and so I'm just going to hold these 2 strands together, and I think it will look just fine. I do have about 5 mini skeins, so the same exact amount, same weight of the Eskimo Glitz. So if I run out, I can use those. I also wound up this beautiful skein of yarn from Junkyard, from Kemper. This is the Hermione smooth sock, or this is the smooth sock base in the colorway Hermione. And so I'm going to be making a pair of Hermione's everyday socks, of course. Obvious, that would be obvious. And then I'm really excited to start this project. This will be a flax light sweater for my son. This is the Malabrigo sock yarn in the color Mart. And I really had a vision of what color sweater I wanted to knit for my son. He's got red hair, quite like this, but strawberry blonde red hair, blue eyes, pale skin, and I think the colors that are in this particular yarn, there's some blues, there's some aquas, there's some greens, there's some coppers, there's some burnt orange, and it's just gonna look really, really amazing on him. There's even some purples, I think, in here. Yeah, dark purples, some lavenders. So there's a little bit of everything, but it's got this immense fall feel to it. So it's gonna look fantastic on him. And then I also wound up the Ren and Ollie Twisted Single This is in the Smitten Kitten colorway. It's fingering weight, so everything here is all fingering weight. And this is the colorway that I want to use. I want to do a swatch with these two colors. This is the Madeline Tosh Merino Light in Lepidoptera, and I went crazy and bought 6 skeins of this several years ago because I didn't know how much yarn to buy. I liked the name, I liked the color, and so I'm going to be making a Zweig sweater, and I want this to be sort of the feature yarn for the yoke. And I think the colors are going to look really well together, and so I really want to make a swatch of these two to see how well they play together, because I do have another skein of the Ren & Ollie. It's a different type of yarn. It's the Exotica single that contains yak, but it's the same Smitten Kitten colorway, but it is deeper and a little bit darker. So we'll see how that goes. So this was all this skeining up or winding up took me about 3 hours, and some of these just went beautifully, but the whole process of winding up this DK weight yarn for Madeline Tosh Sachet, the skeins themselves are bigger than my Swift, so I have to wind very slowly, otherwise it flies off the Swift and again gets stuck underneath, and then I get really inventive in my cursing, because that is the most annoying thing when you have to deal with yarn spaghetti as you're trying to wind a ball. It just does not work very well. So I think perhaps someday I might get myself one of those umbrella Swifts, because my ball winder works just fine. But that would make life certainly easier. Either that, or my husband will make another set of arms for my Swift. It's sort of just a simple Swift that I can take apart. It's a sort of crisscross with crossing arms, and it just spins on a dowel. And I just need longer arms where I can put pegs in and be able to stretch the yarn all the way around. That would be really nice. In other projects, I have started cutting out fabric for my next 2 quilts. So I have something called the Tropical Stars quilt, and I will be making myself a half square triangles, and I will be making a quilt for myself to go in my room out of that fabric. I bought several charm packs of one particular color or colorway mixture of batiks, and I think it's going to look really, really beautiful with sort of this general neutral that my husband and I chose to have in our bedroom. I think it'll just be really soft, muted, very calming, nothing like a crazy quilt, just very, interesting and hopefully warm. And as we're heading into fall and winter, I think we'll really enjoy having that. So that's pretty much everything that I have right now. I'm just really excited to keep working on all these knitting things, and this is the pink sweater here is will be my 18th finished project for this year. So I will have made my goal of making 18 projects in 2018, but I don't feel any urge to slow down with my knitting. I'm just having so much fun. I just can't wait to keep knitting all the time. I hope you had an enjoyable little visit with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.